Okay, so Joshua chapter 2, there's like a change in direction. Like this could be a completely different book from what we had in Joshua chapter 1. We're introduced to a woman named Rahab. She has a past, but through God, she also has a future with him. Let me read the first 7 verses of Joshua chapter 2. I've only got one verse here, but I'll read the other ones. If you want to follow along, you can follow along. Then Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men as spies secretly. Go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went out and came into the house of a harlot whose name was Rahab and lodged there. It was told the king of Jericho, saying, Behold, men from the sons of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. And the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab, saying, Bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come and searched out all the land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said to them, Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they came from. It came about that when it was time to shut the gate at dark, the sun was going down, that the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them in the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued them on the road to Jordan, to the fords. And as soon as those who were pursuing them had gone out, they shut the gate. Now, Joshua sends 2 spies to check out the land across the Jordan. Jordan's like dividing. They're on the east. This is on the west. And he wants to check out not just what's on the other side, but specifically Jericho. Joshua probably instructed them to look for several things. My mind says, okay, is it fortified? Who are the inhabitants? How numerous are they? Is there abundant water? Is the land good for crops? Are there other valued resources? What connections are there to other places? If you want to be on a crossroad, you can collect money with commerce. In the first verse of this chapter, we are introduced to this woman named Rahab. Now, from just these verses, what do we know about Rahab? She was an inhabitant of Jericho, that's clear. She's introduced as a harlot. She is mentioned a few times in the Bible, and she's the only one in the Bible with this. She's not the only one in the Bible with a title, but with this title she is. It's not a title, it's more of a label. You think of a title, Alexander the Great, or something like that. Rahab the prostitute, or Rahab the harlot. That's not a title, that's a label. There are other people in the Bible that have various titles, like John the Baptist. Okay, John the Baptist. Or you got Simon the Zealot, Matthew the tax collector, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. You know who their father is. Most of them don't seem to have as bad as Rahab the prostitute, including even Matthew the tax collector. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be labeled by my sin. In the past, you could have called me Michael the liar. Now, thankfully, via God's grace, that's no longer true. Now, many of you probably have a label at some point in your life. Hopefully something positive and nothing degrading. Your parents maybe come up with a label for you that's cute or something like that. Maybe your friends, you did something at one point and then, remember the time you did that? Oh, you were blah, blah. We also see that what we've read so far, that she seems to be well known because the king of Jericho sends messengers to her house because there are rumors that 2 spies from this people of Israel visit her. And she confirms, there was two men over here, but she didn't know who they were. And they left, she told them they left before the sun went down. She's actually hiding them. So she's telling a lie. That may be a good thing or bad thing. The king's messengers leave because Rahab encourages the king, go pursue them quickly so they won't get away. They trust what she says. And they start searching for these 2 guys. Now, you have to read a little bit here, but it appears that Rahab actually has a little bit of wealth. You see, her house was built into the wall around the whole city. And she had windows looking out beyond that wall. She also had a patio, or whatever you want to call it, up on the top. And she had a lot of rooms. It could be that her vocation was maybe lucrative. I don't know. She is gentle, and she's a Gentile, and she questions questionable morals as being a prostitute and would lie. But one might say, as we go on in the story, that her lie probably saved these two spies, so maybe it was justified. She's very friendly. She's willing to help these two foreigners to spy out her city in order to destroy it. Kind of a traitor to her own people. Now, let's continue reading in chapter 2 about Rahab and these two guys that she's hiding. So I got the whole passage here, continuing with verse 8. This is right after what I finished reading. Now before they laid down, she came up to them on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land have melted away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did with the two kings of Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. When we heard it, our hearts melted, and no courage remained in any man any longer because of you. For the Lord, your God, He is God in heaven, above all the earth beneath. Okay, so we get a little bit more about Rahab, which I think is kind of surprising. Now, we find out not only as Rahab thinks of the Israelites camping thus far in Jordan, in fact, she thinks more about the God of Israel, the powerful God, the one true God. She has the beginnings of faith, not through anyone sharing with her any kind of testimony. No, she heard the miracles of God and how He saved the people of Israel when they left Egypt, recounting them walking across the ground, the dirt of the Red Sea, or the base of the Red Sea, because the water's been parted, as well as the defeat of the Amorite kings of Sihon and Og. She's aware of the miracles that God did, and she knew that the God of the Israelites was not only the one and true God, but He was the God of heaven and earth. Furthermore, she shares with the spies that the inhabitants of her city, Jericho, have fear and dread for the people of Israel because God is with them. Now, I want you to think about this a little bit. Going across the Red Sea with parting the waters happened 40 years before this happened. So she's talking about something that happened 40 years ago from when she's talking to these spies. She has more faith in God than she has in the people of her city. To me, she seems like somebody that's actually strong and courageous, which is what John talked about last week, but he was talking about that in terms of the Israelites. So, if you read the rest of chapter 2, you'll see that Rahab, and I'm just going to summarize, has faith that even though the Israelites on the other side of the Jordan River will come and destroy Jericho, the city Susan, she believes that through the Israelites, that God will save her and her extended family. She asks the spies to promise, with God as their witness, to save not only her, but her whole family. And they agree to do that when Jericho is destroyed, because she has treated them well. Now, the spies pledge that she and her family will be safe. After dark, Rahab lets them down the wall. Again, she lives right on the edge, on the wall. She lets them down via rope, telling them how to avoid being found. They go for a little bit and stay there for a certain period of time, and then you can go. And before leaving, the spies tell Rahab to tie a red thread in her window so they will know which house is hers. Reading the last verse of chapter 2, we read that when the spies return to Joshua, they tell him, quote, "Surely the Lord has given all the land in our hands. Moreover, all the inhabitants of the land have melted before us." Now, I'm going to summarize, real quick, what goes on between here and chapter 6, because that's the time we hear about Rahab. Chapter 3 records Joshua leading the people across the Jordan. In chapter 6, we read how Joshua and the people of God destroyed Jericho. For 6 days, Sunday school, you probably heard from Sunday school, Joshua battled Jericho. Okay. Oh, yeah, that city's trouble. For 6 days they march around the whole perimeter of the city, outside the wall. And they're led by the Ark of the Covenant and the priests. And on the 7th day, they march around Jericho 7 times. And the last time, the priests blow trumpets, the people shout. And just because of the sound waves, must have been deafening, the walls of the city crumble. Near the end of Joshua 6, we read what happens to Rahab. Joshua said to the 2 men who spied out, "Go over to the harlot's house," again, label, "and bring the woman and all she has out of there, as to who you swore to her." So the young men, who were spies, went and brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all she had. And they also brought all of her relatives and placed them outside the camp of Israel. They burned the city, that is Jericho, and all that was in it. Only the silver and gold and articles of bronze and iron they put in the treasury of the house of the Lord. However, Rahab the harlot and her father's household and all she had, Joshua spared, and she lived in the midst of Israel to this day, for she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent out to spy. The spies promised that they were going to save her, and they did exactly what they said they'd do. They saved Rahab and her extended family. Not only that, but Rahab and her family are actually adopted into Israel. Fitting, since she was already adopted by faith into God's family. But this isn't the last we hear of Rahab. It's the last we hear of her in the book of Joshua, but not the last we hear of her in the Bible. You see, she's mentioned not only in the Old Testament, but she's also mentioned in the New Testament. Now, the book of Ruth, how many like the book of Ruth? Okay? Book of Ruth, it does not mention Rahab, but she was the mother of Boaz. She was Boaz's mother, who redeemed the young widow Ruth. How do we know this? Now, I'm sure some of you in your Bible studies, you look for passages that are very interesting and you memorize them, like the genealogy we find in Matthew 1, right? How many of you memorize the genealogy in Matthew 1? None of us. No. Luke 3, there's also another genealogy. Any of us memorize them? No, we didn't memorize those. We memorized other verses. But if you start reading Matthew 1, starting at verse 2, we read of one genealogy. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers. I'm going to skip down to verse 4, because this is an awful long time. And nation, N-A-H-S-H-O-N, some of these words are hard to pronounce, was the father of S-A-L-M-O-N. Is that Salmon? Salmon? I don't know. Salmon was the father of Boaz by Rahab. So Salmon, I'm going to call him that, Salmon and Rahab, they get married. Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth. Obed, the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of King David. So, apparently, Rahab's life changed. She married someone named Salmon. They had a son named Boaz. And the same Boaz marries this young widow Ruth. Rahab is the ancestor of King David, as well as Joseph, the husband of Mary, who bore out Jesus. That's at the end of that genealogy in Matthew 1. That's where you get to. Now, it's not the last we hear of her. Hebrews 11, verses 30 and 31. We read, "By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith, Rahab the harlot," so look at that label, "did not perish along with those who were disobedient after she had welcomed the spies in peace." And it was Rahab acting in faith that saved the spies. As a result, they saved her and her close family. According to Joshua 6, they are the only inhabitants that survived Jericho's fall. Not the last time we read about Rahab. James 2:25 reads, "In the same way, was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way?" Rahab's actions saved the 2 spies, messengers. In James 2, it was a direct response, a result of her faith. Now, in chapter 2 of Joshua, Joshua never gives us the name of the 2 spies. There's tradition of who they are, but they are never listed. This chapter is about Rahab. And like I said, she's mentioned in both the Old and New Testament. Now let's complete the dossier that I've been putting together here. After the destruction of Jericho, Rahab and her family lived with the Israelites. Not only that, she was Ruth's mother-in-law, becoming part of the family tree that included both King David and Joseph, the husband of Mary. She's called out, like I said, in Hebrews 11, as one who by faith saved the spies and thus lived. James writes in his letter also that she was commended because of her faith, because she received the spies and sent them out safely. What can you and I learn about God from this? First of all, God can redeem anyone, using them to further his kingdom. From a human perspective, Rahab was an unlikely person to make a difference in God's kingdom. Those of you that were here 2 weeks ago, I talked about rocks, and you got rocks that are really rough and you polish them. She was a pretty rough rock. She was nothing special at the beginning of her walk with faith, but she turned out to be quite important and polished very nicely. She was not a great leader like Moses or Joshua. She didn't write any books in the Bible. She allowed God to use her. Now, she had a past, but that didn't keep her from God. In fact, God forgives the sins of his people. We know that her as Rahab the prostitute or Rahab the harlot. Later she's known as the mother of Moses, great-grandmother of Jesse, great-great-grandmother of King David, and a woman of faith. I don't know about you, but I have judged people by their past failures. Yet God extends his love to all who call upon him. He isn't looking for perfect people. He is looking for humble and repentant people. People willing to follow and be used by him. Rahab trusted God, even when she didn't know much about him at the time. Remember, she came to faith because she heard the stories of the God of Israel. And this God was powerful than anything she knew in Jericho. And because of this God of the Israelites, she had faith in this God. And she trusted the Israelites actually more than she trusted the people of her own country. God had a future for Rahab beyond her upbringing as a pagan Canaanite and a life as a prostitute. Even with the simple faith, Rahab acted on that faith. She confidently hid the spies and trusted that God would take care of her and her family. When we put our faith in God into action, we grow in faith. Rahab trusted God and discovered this. Faith is like a muscle. If you don't use it, it's going to get weaker. If you use it, it'll grow. And the last thing, she didn't fear her own people. The king could have said, "Oh, Rahab, you help these spies, I'm going to kill you." That wouldn't be surprising. Instead, she trusted in the all-powerful God of the Israelites. She followed God instead of the people of Jericho. It saved her life then, and it saved her life for eternity. Now, what about you and me? God can redeem us from our past and any label that we deserve or someone puts on us. God has prepared a future for us, both here and now on earth, as well as for all eternity. Will we trust God and follow his leading? Like I said, faith is like a muscle. Walk by faith and your faith will grow. Ignore it and your faith stays weak. And lastly, the world is calling us to go into all kinds of directions. Like I said, wealth, pleasure, selfish ambition, status, and the like. In the end, these goals will lead us astray, and in the end, they'll leave us empty. If we trust God daily, we will grow with him, and in him, we will know joy, peace, and contentment. Let me pray. Lord, I thank you for the life of Rahab, one seemingly lost through her sin, yet redeemed and used by you. Cleanse us from our sin and help us to walk with you as you lead us. Give us the courage to step out in faith daily with our goal to do your will. I ask this in Jesus' holy name. Amen.